How does one balance being aware and frustrated by certain issues in our world while remaining hopeful? Today, for the final episode of season 1, we're going to unpack why hope is sometimes difficult to maintain and how we can maintain positivity in the face of challenge. You're listening to Fed Up at Figuring It Out, unpacking politics, culture, and global power. If you ever thought, why does this all feel like bullshit? You're in the right place. My name is Priya Mignot. As always, everything cited throughout this episode will be in this episode's description. Throughout the season, we've explored a lot of themes. And although each offers a critical perspective in our modern society and is important, it can be hard not to drown in them or become bitter with the reality of our world. There's a balance, and often it can be harder to be hopeful than pessimistic, because challenges make us want to generate solutions. And oftentimes these complex issues, we rarely have an easy fix. Often these issues have layers to them. And although it may seem black and white to us or you and me, there is more complexity than that. The world is made up of shades of gray, and we all know it. But that doesn't mean that we stop looking for answers and resolutions. It simply means the answer we're looking for is rarely as simple or as fast as we may like. Now, being aware of the world's issues is vital for developing a more honest and critical lens. It ensures we have educated voters and societies. It holds the promise that atrocities and corruption are less likely to occur the more educated or aware a population is. It is a vital part also of being a good human and an intelligent citizen. However, being aware also means there is no rose-colored glasses. You see the problems, they're right in front of you. And once you do, you can't go back to pretending you don't. For example, learning about fascism might make you realize that you might be living in a more fascist country, or you might be starting to notice the trends of fascism worldwide, and that can make you nervous. So you can shut it out. You can say, I'm not going to look at it anymore. But that you now have that seed in you, and you now have that information. So even if you pretend and try to ignore fascism and ignore the ongoing trends of it, you still now know what it looks like, and so you can identify it. So there's not, once you know something, there's not really a way to go backwards into unknowing something. And that's a big challenge for a lot of things. And again, it's because you see the problems. And once you see the problems and other people don't, or you're in situations where it feels like other people don't, that can be really frustrating. As activist Gloria Steinem says, quote, "The truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off," end quote. And that is literally the case for everything. Once you start to notice injustice or notice societal trends or political trends or things you don't fundamentally agree with and you don't like where things are heading, it's going to piss you off. Like, you're now seeing the truth, but that also can make you really frustrated with systems in place and just make you a little bit bitter to the world, which is not what you really want either. And is often the case with understanding one issue, you end up exploring more and more issues or more and more topics in a field, like, for example, politics. But attending to all the world's issues is impossible, exhausting, and aggravating. And it can lead to bitterness and even depression in some cases. Because when you're bombarded with all the world's problems, there is a loss of hope. And almost like this buzzing low-grade rage when you spread yourself too thin. And I've seen this multiple times with people. I've probably already done this multiple times with people. It's like when you're so aware of so many things in the world and you're not getting the solutions you're hoping for, or whatever, and you've kind of lost hope. You're like, there's so many issues, and this is everything that's going wrong. And it feels like I'm the only one who's really noticing this, although you're not. But it can feel like that in many ways, depending on your bubble. It can almost like just drive you a little bit nuts and make you angry at the world, because you're like, why is no one fixing this? Why is no one noticing this is a problem? Why is no one standing up for this issue as strongly as I'm standing up for this issue? And there's multiple reasons to that, but getting angry and being unhopeful, because often anger can be used for both hope and not hopeful causes, because you just get angry because you're so, like, you have no other emotion to express at that point. So there's like there is a balance to it, but often the bitterness, the depression, that frustration, the endless anger, it's because you've lost hope. You don't think the solution is going to be attained. And that's not a good way to live either, because that kind of just makes you miserable. So the question is, how does a person balance being both aware and remaining hopeful? Where should you find hope? It has been argued that hope is unnecessary in a movement, that is unrealistic for people to maintain joy in the face of great adversity. Yet, it is vital for the long-term success of both the field striving for change and the movement itself, and it's vital for the person within it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say hope is easy. Hope is not easy. Of course, it's not easy. Like, for example, in this situation, imagine you're a black person and you are dealing with racism all the time, right? And microaggressions, things like that. And I'm telling you that you need to be hopeful. That sounds like bullshit. You're probably like, that's not going to happen. And I understand that's the hard part, is because you have to be hopeful. You have to maintain some aspect of positivity going forward in a movement, regardless of the movement, for it to be successful, for you to find joy in your life, for the movement to find success, because people are drawn to positivity and they're drawn to hope. And it's a natural thing people love, despite some people being like, no, I don't want to have hope. But it's a thing people want hope. And so if you can have hope within your own movement, it inspires other people to have hope, and it draws other people to you because you have hope. So it's a hard thing not to just be unhopeful and angry and frustrated. You just also need to have that aspect of positivity in the face of these challenges. As Dan Savage says, quote, "During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night." End quote. The AIDS crisis was devastating, and yet each aspect of this quote and this process was important. The grief, the fight, perhaps most importantly, the hope. The idea that they were dancing through the night after they buried their friends, so they grieved. They had to protest, so they put up the fight. They said, "We're here for this. We are standing up for this." But the dancing is what kept them going. Because if all you have is grief and frustration and sadness, then the momentum isn't really going to last very long. And so this dancing was a way for them to practice what they were envisioning, to practice the future they wanted, to practice the art and joy of community. The hope of practicing what you're fighting for often can remind yourself of your why. Like, why are you fighting so hard for a cause? Why do you care so deeply about a cause? And it's because you know there's something better out there. You know there's a better possibility. Like, for example, why do we keep fighting during a crisis? Like, when there's an immense challenge in front of us. It's because you have the hope that there will be a better day ahead, that there will be better days ahead. And it is that hope that keeps you going, that keeps you moving. Maintaining joy is not easy. And so here's a kind of couple things I would recommend as someone who's been studying politics and social stuff for a really long time, as well as been an activist for a really long time in many ways. I would always say start by looking at solutions that are already happening in your field. Just, it's so simple. Like, if you're like, I really care about homelessness, for example, you can look at different initiatives that are being led in your communities, or different initiatives that are being held worldwide to help combat homelessness. And this can be, I've seen a couple of like the trailers with the showers in them, or community gardens, or like even the days where like homeless people would get like haircuts, they'll get a wardrobe change, they'll get offered jobs. You can go see what's going on in your own homeless shelters nearby. Or if you're like, I really am interested in ending warfare, for example, which is a big one, you can start looking at like policies that are in place. You can start looking at, and policies may not make your jam feel better, but you can also start looking at like local groups, like grassroots initiatives of like bombing disarmament in certain countries, penalties for like you abusing, like the crimes against humanity, stuff like that. And so there already are solutions coming up in many, many fields. Like in pretty much every field, there are solutions being generated, or at least maybe not the be all end all solution, but the things working towards that. And so that's just vital. Like, even I was really into environmental activism a while back, and I remember I became like super, I guess, kind of like bitter about the world because I was worried about climate change and the environment and all this stuff. And all of those things are super important. And something that really helped me during that time was I took a climate change course online and I learned more about climate change. I think I was in like grade 9, but I learned more about climate change. I learned more about what scientists are doing, how different government bodies and institutions are combating it, but also how like grassroots initiatives are combating it and like solar energy and all this kind of stuff. And then I think I also read the book Drawdown, which I think it was 100 solutions to combat the climate crisis. And so just understanding that there were solutions already out there, and it wasn't on me to come up with them necessarily, but there was people already doing the groundwork. That gave me a lot of hope because I was like, I can help with these things. And they're also leading to the future I think should exist. So that's also really helpful. The second thing I do is look for people leading the charge in solutions. And this can just be different activists in your area. This can be different community organizers in your area. This can be politicians or influencers or whatever the case is. But looking for role models in your area is really important. And this is, I think, for everything that you kind of care about, this is important to do. For example, if you're like, I really care about body positivity and um, self love and all this kind of stuff, you can look at influencers online like Spencer Barbosa and like a bunch of other ones who are really supporting that kind of movement. And that's not just it. There's a bunch for body positivity, which is great. There's also ones for climate change, and there's also ones for war, and there's also ones for food security. Like, there's so many people doing so much stuff and dedicating their entire lives to fighting these things. Like, if you're like, I'm concerned about fascism, there are people, scholars, community leaders, whatever the case is, politicians even, who are leading the charge against fascism. And just trying to identify who your people are and who you want to look up to can really cause a lot of hope because obviously those people have hope. They're digging their feet into the ground because they know something better is possible. The third thing I would do is localize yourself. Get involved with your local community, grab a coffee with friends, and remind yourself that most people are good. Most people want things that are better. And yes, there's things that get in the way of that. Again, the world is made up of shades of gray. It's not black and white. But sometimes when you're online or you're constantly involved in one particular issue or multiple issues, you're just super agitated. And you're kind of just like, I'm done with people because that can be a whole thing. But at the end of the day, being with people is better than not being with people. And especially in your local community. I'm not saying get online and get on like, I don't know, a forum for the topic you care about or whatever the case is. And that's an important thing to do. But for the localize yourself idea, I'm saying get offline. I'm saying don't actually engage with the topic you're dealing with right now. Take a break. Take a break. And like maybe go volunteer at your local community organization, whatever that is, or your local food bank, or the local homeless shelter, or and that it just kind of grounds you more in what is happening currently in your own area. And then also just grab a coffee with friends. Like, don't isolate yourself to so much because you're like, I'm so dedicated to this mission. It's like, yes, but you have a life to live and it's not all on you to do it. So you also need to make sure you're humanizing yourself and reminding yourself that you have connection needs while in the process of trying to solve certain problems. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is it's not all on you. You're not Atlas condemned to hold the sky up for all eternity. It's not all on you. You can choose to let go of some things. And it's not your job to solve every single problem in the world. It's not your job to solve one problem alone in this world. That's a team effort. Author and activist Glennon Doyle has this to say in one of her most recent books about life management, but I think it's easily applicable to this situation. Quote, it's scary to know that I could do the same thing with my own life, that I could become so focused on what needs to be fixed that I don't see the beauty of my life that needs no fixing, that I could be so busy managing my life that I miss it, end quote. Don't forget to live. Don't miss out on your own life. Find things to be aware of and pick your issues, absolutely, but still enjoy your life. Don't condemn yourself to misery or living your life as if it's this endless uphill battle. That's not healthy. It's okay to be joyful. It's okay to live. And it's essential that you maintain hope. Thanks for listening to this season of Fed Up but Figuring It Out. If you found any topic from the season intriguing, let me know, and don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. Sharing is caring and it helps this podcast grow. Thanks again. Bye!